Dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar, 7 o'clock in Lagos. Good evening and welcome to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world at wadr.org. Coming up in the news, Ivorian opposition PPACI expels 22 members for registering as independent candidates despite party's withdrawal from the December elections. ECOWAS Court throws out Ghana's former Chief Justice Tokonu's application.
Sitting in public, the court declares that it has jurisdiction to determine this case. However, declares the application is inadmissible and orders each party to bear the cost.
Nigerian President Tinubu postpones foreign trips as bandits adopt schoolgirls and attack worshippers in Northwest region. Reactions trail suspension of international NGOs and associations in Niger.
I
believe both parties must put the beneficiaries, the vulnerable people, at the center.
Details of these stories and more are coming up shortly.
Here is Augustine Coley with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining us this evening. This edition begins in Côte d'Ivoire, where 22 members of the opposition PPACR party have been expelled from the organization. Their dismissal was initiated by the party's leader, former President Laurent Gbagbo, who took action because they registered as independent candidates for the legislative elections scheduled for December 27, 2025. Gbagbo views their decision as a defiance of the party's stance against participating in the upcoming legislative polls. Imo Edet tells us more.
Despite the PPACI's decision to abstain from participating in the legislative elections scheduled for December 27, 2025, some members of former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo's party defied this directive by registering as independent for the electoral contest. In a press release published on Wednesday, the party announced that Laurent Gbagbo, the president of the PPACI, had revoked the positions of 22 executives, including Stéphane Kipre, Wagni Georges Ahmad, and Seri Luma. The statement explained that this carefully considered decision was made in the context of political responsibility and respect for the victims of the October 2025 presidential election. Recalled during the PPACI Central Committee session on November 6, Laurent Gbagbo clearly stated his opposition to the party's participation in the legislative elections in the near term. He expressed discontent toward members who claim allegiance to the PPACI in times of prosperity but abandon it during challenges. The party's statement reiterated that it is with regret but steadfastness that Laurent Gbagbo has chosen to withdraw his confidence from those who knowingly embrace disobedience and insubordination by running in the legislative elections against the party's decision.
Imo edified that report. Meanwhile, the Ivorian Independent Electoral Commission has published the list of candidates selected for the December 27, 2025 legislative elections. According to Ibrahim Koubert Koulibaly, president of the electoral body, a total of 1,162 applications were received. Of the total applications, the Commission selected 1,143 after review, while some of the 272 selected candidates withdrew their applications. The key criteria that had to be met for the application were mainly being of Ivorian nationality, being at least 25 years old, residing in Côte d'Ivoire for at least 5 years before the election, and being registered on the electoral list. Now, here in Senegal, a high-level meeting has sparked reactions. On Tuesday, President Bassirou Diomaye Faye received members of the PASTEF party's political bureau in a particularly tense political climate. While the party reaffirmed its full support for Ousmane Sonko, the head of government surprised many by sidestepping the question of a possible candidacy in 2029. This statement has raised eyebrows and could upset the expectations of some members of the PASTEF party. Christopher Aticho completes the story.
One of the primary issues discussed between Bassirou Diomaye Faye and the political bureau of PASTEF party was the possibility of his candidacy for the 2029 presidential election. President Diomaye Faye addressed this topic by stating, I quote, I don't know if I'll still be alive in 2029, end of quote. This remark appeared to settle the debate regarding his potential presidential terms, which has often been brought up by the ruling majority, diverting attention from present socio-economic issues. It was also noted that Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko returned to his duties on Tuesday after a short break. Following the meeting with the PASTEF Political Bureau, a sense of reconciliation seems to be emerging within the ruling majority. Despite the speculation regarding disagreement between President Bassirou Diomaye Faye and Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko, one key question remains: will any differences between the two leaders be set aside permanently in order to concentrate on the critical diplomatic and socio-economic projects necessary for revitalizing the Senegalese economy? This question continues to be a significant topic of discussion in the country.
Christopher, a teacher with that report. Elsewhere, the ECOWAS Court of Justice has dismissed Ghana's former Chief Justice Gertrude Tokonu's application seeking interim measures to halt the work of the committee that investigated her removal from office. The court ruling delivered on Wednesday, November 19, via Zoom, comes after Justice Tokonu applied for temporary prohibition orders to stop the committee chaired by Justice Gabriel Scott Poimand from continuing its inquiry into matters that eventually led to her removal and the swearing-in of her successor, Chief Justice Paul Bafo-Bourne. While the ECOWAS Court acknowledged that the former Chief Justice had established a prima facie case alleging human rights violations, it ruled that she failed to demonstrate the urgency required for temporary orders. The judges noted that she waited nearly 3 months after her suspension on April 22, 2025, before filing the motion, a delay that undermined her claim of imminent harm. Here is a highlight of the court's ruling.
While the applicant met the 5-year timeline for applying for review, but their failure to satisfy the requirements of the new facts renders the compliance invaluable, as the requirement of admissibility of an application for review are cumulative. The absence of one of them is sufficient to endanger the admissibility of the application. In the light of the foregoing, the court hereby declares that the application for revision of judgment number ECW/CCJ/JUD/44/23 delivered on the 24th of November 2023 is inadmissible. And for that reason, sitting in public, the court declares that it has jurisdiction to determine this case, however, declares the application is inadmissible and orders each party to bear the cost. The full complement of this judgment will be made available to parties upon signature by panel members.
Highlights of a ruling by the ECOWAS Court of Justice into complaint filed by Ghana's former Chief Justice Gertrude Tokonu.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Now let's cross over to Nigeria, as the adoption of schoolgirls in the northwestern state of Kebbi by bandits remains a major concern. Just as President Bola Tinubu instructed that the girls be safely rescued and returned to their respective families, individuals and institutions such as UNICEF have added to the pressure. They are demanding the immediate release of the over 20 female students kidnapped from a boarding school early Monday by bandits after they shot dead a teacher. The armed men gained entrance into the school premises after a gunfight with a police officer stationed there. Abdullahi Hassan reports.
We will continue day and night until we find these people.
Since the abduction of the schoolgirls in Maga Town, Kebbi State, security forces, including police and military officers, have been deployed to rescue them safely. This mission was reiterated on Tuesday by Nigeria's Chief of Army Staff, Major General Waidi Shoaibu, during his visit to the locality.
So for the commanders here, we leverage on intelligence so that you conduct an intelligence-based mission to rescue these girls. It has become a pattern that the bandits, they prey on soft targets. If they know you are in a location, they won't come there.
For the security agencies, their rescue mission surrounds locating the bandits and rescuing 24 schoolgirls. Halima Bandi is Kebbi State Commissioner for Basic and Secondary Education.
Out of 26, 2 escaped, meaning now abducted students are 24. This is a tragedy that puts everyone around us into a trauma. We don't know where they sleep. We don't know the environment they are.
In a statement, UNICEF described the incident as a tragic reminder of the urgent need to protect children, schools, and the personnel they rely upon to learn safely. Monday's raid was the second mass school abduction in Kebbi in 4 years. In June 2021, bandits took more than 100 students and staff members from a government college. They were later released in batches over 2 years after parents paid the ransom. Across the northwest and north-central regions of Nigeria, bandits attack schools, villages, and commuters and abduct for ransom.
Abdullahi Hassan fight that report. Meanwhile, Nigerian President Bola Tinubu has ordered the deployment of additional security personnel to Iruku and the entire Ikiti local government area of Kwara State following an attack by gunmen on Tuesday. In light of this situation, President Tinubu has also postponed his scheduled trips to Johannesburg, South Africa, and Luanda, Angola. He is awaiting further security briefings on the recently kidnapped schoolgirls in Kebbi and the attack on worshippers at the Christ Apostolic Church in Iruku, Kwara State. The president has directed the police to pursue the bandits responsible for the attack on the worshippers. Tinubu was initially scheduled to leave Abuja today to attend the 20th G20 summit in South Africa, after which he was to proceed to Luanda for the 7th AU-EU summit. According to spokesperson Onanuga, the president will now wait for reports from Vice President Kashim Shettima, who has been tasked with visiting Kebbi on his behalf. Additionally, Tinubu is expecting updates from the police and the Department of State Services regarding the incident in Kwara State. Crossing over to the Central Sahel region, particularly Niger, where reactions are pouring in following the suspension of several NGOs and humanitarian organizations. Authorities accuse them of failing to submit their 2024 financial reports. The Nigerian government now wants to know the source of funding for humanitarian organizations operating in the country. Why some welcome the measure, others fear the consequences for the population in insecure areas. Sankule Janko has the details in this report.
Civil society actors in Nigeria say the suspension of several humanitarian NGOs and development associations that did not publish their annual financial reports will enable better regulation and oversight of their activities. Abdelaziz Grabajubo is a prominent civil society actor.
As was emphasized at the forum in Telaberi, a clear absence is better than a dubious presence. The fact that all these NGOs and associations were unable to present their financial statements today raises serious questions. We are now committed to sovereignty. We are committed to a system where Niger belongs to the Nigerians. So there is no longer any question of anyone giving their money to sabotage the government efforts.
However, humanitarian workers warn that the suspension of these NGOs and humanitarian associations may negatively affect the populations they serve. They are urging the authorities to address the gap in humanitarian services that this suspension will create.
I believe both parties must put the beneficiaries, the vulnerable people, at the center, and who better than the state is supposed to do this, since the others are merely partners. Partners because they have their mandates to do this work. But in any case, I think that once commitments are signed, they must be able and willing to honor them.
According to the Nigerian Ministry of the Interior, a total of 144 organizations are in compliance, including 60 international NGOs. The remaining organizations, over 100 in total, have 60 days to comply, which includes more than 2,000 national humanitarian associations operating in the country.
A report from WADR's Niamey correspondent Mutala Zuberu, voiced by Sankule Janko. You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa, Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Ivorian opposition PPACR expels 22 members for registering as independent candidates despite party's withdrawal from December elections. ECOWAS court throws out Ghana's former Chief Justice Tokonun's application. Nigerian President Tinubu postpones foreign trips as bandits adopt schoolgirls and attack worshippers in Northwest region. Reactions trail suspension of international NGOs and associations in Niger. Still ahead in the news, we have the guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Many thanks for being with us. We are streaming live on YouTube at WADR and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Civil society organizations in West Africa are being urged to renew their commitment to the people, build grassroots connection, and adapt to a rapidly changing civic environment. At the opening of the 2025 West Africa Civil Society Week in Accra, Ghana, speakers called for deeper introspection within the sector, emphasizing the need for authenticity, collaboration, and innovation in responding to emerging social, political, and digital challenges. NAD edited reports.
Opening the forum, Executive Director of the West Africa Civil Society Institute, WACSI, which are organizers of this year's forum, Dr. Nana Afajinu, said the sector must practice what it preaches by grounding its work in the realities of the communities it serves.
Redefinition also requires honesty. We must confront the internal weaknesses within our sector. Competition that erodes solidarity, dependence that undermines sustainability, and accountability frameworks that speak upwards, not downwards, not outwards. To renew trust, we must be as transparent and grounded as the values we defend, and those values must resonate in all that we do. We must practice what we preach.
She believes that at the end of the forum, some productive conclusions will be arrived at. Dr. Nana Afajinu believes that at the end of the forum, some productive conclusions will be arrived at.
Let Accra be a space of creative dissent and practical design, a right ground where ideas turn into action and action into measurable impact beyond 2025.
Also speaking at the event was the African Union High Representative for Silencing the Guns, Dr. Mohammed Ibn Chambers. He commended the historic role of civil society in advancing democracy, but warned that many organizations risk losing their authenticity by drifting away from the grassroots.
Civil society has been both a conscience and catalyst in West Africa's democratic evolution. From the struggles against military rule to today's battles against state capture, corruption, and disinformation. However, let's face it, CSOs must also look inward with honesty. The phenomenon of NGOization has distanced many organizations from their grassroots constituencies. The tendency to advance the agenda of funders at the expense of local needs has weakened their authenticity and responsiveness to the communities they represent.
The 2025 West Africa Civil Society Week, hosted in Accra, brings together civic leaders, policymakers, and development partners to deliberate on rebuilding trust, expanding civic space, and strengthening democracy across the sub-region. For WDR, Nadiri Tete, Accra.
The G20 summit, recognized as the largest assembly of major global economies, commenced in South Africa on Tuesday. The two-day summit runs until Thursday, November 20, 2025. For nations in the global south, hopes are high that Johannesburg will spearhead a progressive, inclusive, and solution-driven discussion amid a fractured geopolitical landscape. To address the complex crisis facing the world today, South Africa embraced the theme solidarity, equality, sustainability. Details of this development will come up in the later part of this newscast. Elsewhere, the campaign to eradicate female genital mutilation, FGM, in Liberia has reached a pivotal juncture as civil society organizations intensify their advocacy efforts. They urged an outright ban on the practice. Recent developments have shifted the decision-making power to the Liberian populace, setting the stage for a nationwide consultation on the issue. On Tuesday, activists in the Liberian capital petitioned the National Assembly advocating for a ban on what they deem are harmful cultural practices. WADR's Monrovia correspondent Ibrahim Parker reports.
The Women and Girls Protection Act of 2025, submitted to the House of Representatives by President Joseph Boakai in October, aims to prohibit FGM, child marriage, trafficking, and other traditional practices. Miata Gamen Dawolo, one of the lead campaigners, urges lawmakers to pass the Women and Girls Protection Act to protect women and girls from the dangers associated with FGM.
Approximately 38.2% to 44.4% of Liberian women aged 15 to 39 have undergone FGM, with much higher prevalence rates in rural areas, over 50%. FGM can lead to severe immediate complications and violate the rights of women and girls.
The fate of the bill now rests in the hands of Liberians across all 73 electoral districts who will decide whether to outlaw FGM, a practice still present in certain regions of the country. Already, the issue is fueling heated debate on the floor of the lower chamber. The National Association of the Kwede-speaking People of Liberia and the National Supreme Elder Councils of Liberia had recently petitioned the legislature to reject the bill, highlighting the cultural significance of the Sunday society where FGM is often practiced. It is worth noting that for years, international developmental partners and local rights groups have consistently called for a ban on female genital mutilation, emphasizing its violation of fundamental human rights. For Newslink on WADR, April Parker, Monrovia.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, our guest segment this evening focuses on the G20 summit, the largest assembly of major global economies, which commenced in South Africa on Tuesday. South Africa embraced the theme solidarity, equality, sustainability. However, the absence of U.S. President Donald Trump cast a doubt and a shadow over the event's objectives, according to several international relations and policy analysts. Despite these concerns, experts like Dr. Michael Nketia remains optimistic, suggesting there is still room for impactful progress at this crucial summit.
It is worrying because how can there be G20 summit when the leader of the free world, the leader of the largest economy, the most powerful and dominant economy, is not at the G20 summit? It's worrying. It weakens the very existence of the G20. It weakens the very structures of the G20, and it weakens the enforceability of any resolution that is likely to be passed by the G20. Because how do you enforce resolutions when your most strongest dominant member of the group itself is not present or is not part of that decision making? However, on the contrary, if you look at the other side of the argument, the absence of Trump and the U.S. also gives opportunity to middle players like Brazil, South Africa, Indonesia, the emerging powers like China, India, to all come together and also perhaps take center stage and look at other issues of global concern. The world is confronted by so many challenges. When we talk about the poly crisis, we are talking about issues of climate, energy transition, insecurity. There are a lot of them. And I believe the other countries can take a center stage and attempt to address all these crises in the of the U.S.
What do you believe should define or guide the terms of reference of this solidarity?
Well, in my point of view, I believe strongly that solidarity should not necessarily be about trying to stand with the oppressed. It should also be about seeing the challenges of the oppressed and majority of the people as a shared or common interest. When the whole world begin to see the problems of the underdeveloped world as a shared interest, or the problems of the whole world, that is how we can begin with. It should be about mutual benefit and reciprocity. We can talk about that, because if we look at the concept issue of climate change and other issues that affect the world, climate finance, it should not north trying to, or climate needs of the underdeveloped south. It should be about issues of mutual benefits and mutual development. And then we can talk about the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities. You bringing me these technologies for me to develop doesn't mean you are doing me a favor. Yes, you are bringing me these technologies, but I also have other responsibilities that I also bring on board. The terms of reference should also include inclusivity and representativity. It should be about including everybody, whether rich or poor, whether powerful or less powerful. Everybody should be included at the decision-making table, and it should be representative enough. Every country in the world, whether at the developed side or underdeveloped, or even at the developing world, those who matter and those who doesn't matter, everybody should be brought on board. And then also, the new terms of reference should be action-oriented with measurable outcomes. It shouldn't always be about passing resolutions.
Michael Nkitia is an international relations expert. Well, in sports, the prestigious CAF Awards is underway in Rabat, Morocco. However, Sankule, the sportive Janko, is right here in studio with the details. Good evening, Sankule.
Yes, good evening, Augustine Bilkoye. Like you rightly said, the prestigious CAF Awards are currently on the way in the Moroccan city of Rabat. This special event, the ceremony created by Confederation of African Football CAF, to recognize and celebrate the outstanding African football performers for the year under review. Well, the award honors both individual performances and collective achievements, highlighting the talent, excellence, and commitment of those who are making an impact across the continent. Well, the categories notably recognize the best male and female players, coaches, clubs, national teams, as well as emerging young talents. Well, the men's African Player of the Year for this year include Achraf Hakimi of Morocco and Paris Saint-Germain, Mohamed Salah of Egypt and Liverpool, and Victor Osimhen of Nigeria and Galatasaray. Well, in the women's category, the women's player of the year category, Rashidat Ajibade of Nigeria and Paris Saint-Germain, Ghislaine Chebak of Morocco and Al Hilal, and Sana Masoudi of Morocco and AS FAR. And as we speak, Augustine, under 25 minutes or so, the awards have already begun in Rabat.
Very interesting. But let's talk about who been tipped so far. Looking at the performances of these players. For football, looking at Hakimi of Paris Saint-Germain, which is, of course, from Morocco, and Mohamed Salah. What would you say?
It's going to be a close call, if I must be honest with you, because, I mean, so many people are saying Mohamed Salah deserves it, and others are saying Achraf Hakimi deserves it, because, mind you, Achraf Hakimi, of course, led Paris Saint-Germain to their first ever UEFA Champions League, which they've won. But Mo Salah also is in contention, a serious contender for that matter, because remember, he won the Premier League Player of the Year, he won the Golden Boot, he scored more goals in England. So it's going to be a very, very close one. First, Nigerian international Victor Osimhen did well as well, but the contestant for most people is between Mohamed Salah of Egypt and Achraf Hakimi of Morocco.
Thank you, Sankula. We keep following for the details. And that brings us to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening. Many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Maudo Ju for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X, Instagram at WADR English, on Facebook, WADR English Service. I am Augustine Curley. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM, Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.